Hey, what's going on, DDO players? Axel here. Today I'm going to be going over my personal two-handed fighting melee cleric build. So I'm going to be going through it, talking about it a lot, going through the feats I take and how I play it, enhancements, twists, destiny, all that stuff. So I'll be talking about that a lot today. I guess before I start, I just want to say it's been a while since I've uploaded a video, and I just wanted to say thanks to you guys because I actually just passed 2,000 subs and 2,000 subscribers on YouTube, and this is also my 200th video. So there's a couple things to celebrate right there. So thank you guys who've been watching my stuff and subscribing and all that. And if if you haven't subscribed to me on YouTube, I'd really appreciate it if you take a second and hit the subscribe button. It helps me a lot and gives me motivation to keep making content to see that number go up. Honestly, but let's go ahead and get started on the actual topic of this video. So first of all, if you want to see this written version that you're seeing on your screen right now, you can do that by going to the DDO forums, and I'll put a link in the description below. So let's go ahead and start with build goal. So when I build a cleric, the thing is I don't like building a cleric that only does one thing, and I don't like building clerics that only heal. I don't think that's a good design philosophy generally, because whether you want to cast or you want to melee, you should be contributing offense to the party as well. I think it's just not optimal, and frankly, it's pretty dang boring to just build a cleric that only heals. You want to not be a liability when people don't need healing. That's the basic reason you want to do more than just heal. But anyways, the point of my build specifically has always been I want to make it have as much DPS as humanly possible, while still doing the bare minimum I can do to get away with being a main party healer, or what I feel like I need to be a main party healer. So I basically sacrifice healing as much as I can, to the point where I still feel like I can be a main healer in raids and Reaper and really any quest or anything in the game, and not feel like I'm gimped or have a hard time healing people. In my build specifically, I used to use like enhancement trees like Sacred Defender, for example. Now I'm using straight falconry, and I've made a bunch of other videos on falconry, and it's just a really good tree right now, and I think it's definitely the way to go. But I'm using falconry for wisdom to hit and damage, and still using two-handed fighting. It's my preferred style, and also as a cleric, you can, assuming you're one of a specific few races that can access it, you can also utilize Sylvanas, which is a religious deity feat, as a cleric. So I think it's Forgotten Realms only races. So races like Purple Dragon Knight and like Aasimar Scourge and stuff like that, they can take Sylvanas, which gives them a +2 critical bonus to threat range with mauls. So that's really good synergy there. So that's the kind of the focus of the build: two-handed fighting using Sylvanas with the falconry tree. So it's a build I think, and as I played it, I think can contribute both pretty good DPS and still be a party healer. Now the DPS obviously is not going to be like amazing. It's not going to be like barbarian level or top melee DPS level, anything like that. It's not going to be as good as your top tier true melee classes, but it's honestly pretty dang good. It's not bad. It's way better than it used to be. Especially with falconry now, it's very respectable DPS. It's not bad DPS by any means. Let's see. Okay, my split. I used to run like 15 cleric, 4 paladin, 1 fighter, and I changed that for a few reasons. I'm now running 20 cleric, just pure cleric. The main reason is that epic defensive fighting, it's a feat that you toggle it on, it gives you a big HP bonus, but in exchange, you also get reduced healing range, or not healing, well, casting range, and also range damage and things. But because that exists, you can actually turn that on as a healer and still have pretty good healing abilities. Now it does gimp your ranged healing, but by having epic defensive fighting on, it doesn't affect things like your Radiant Servant aura as a cleric or Radiant Servant burst, things like that. So you can still have it on and still be a pretty good healer, assuming you don't have to go in like do ranged healing, in which cases you will have to turn it off. I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but basically that existing kind of lessens the value of Sacred Defender and Splashing Paladin, because when you splash Paladin, one of the main things you go for is the plus 20% competence bonus. I believe it is. We know, yeah, plus 20% competence bonus. I believe it is to hit points. But whatever the hit point bonus type is called, it does not stack with the epic defensive fighting feat. So that makes it less appealing to go Sacred Defender. Now, if you want Sacred Defender, you could, of course, have that HP bonus all the time, but it's just not worth. I don't think splashing at this point, because with 20 Cleric you get some nice things. You get better DCs on your spells and things. You get better spell penetration. You also get access to the Radiant Servant Capstone. While not amazing, it's something. It's pretty good, but it's just the fact that you can swap epic defensive fighting on and off while it's a headache. It kind of makes Sacred Defender, in my opinion, not really worth going into, and Paladin not at nearly as good of a splash as it used to be. Now, you do lose some things. Obviously, like I said, you can't get that HP bonus all the time by giving it Paladin. You also lose Divine Grace, so your saves are not going to be as good as if you splash Paladin. But overall, considering what you get for staying pure Cleric, considering we're actually maybe doing a little bit of casting on this build, you get other perks like, in addition to better casting abilities, you get more spell points in the Radiant Servant Capstone, and healing's more important than it used to be. So it's more important to have those extra spell points, even though it's not like amazing to have extra spell points on this kind of build because we're not an offensive caster. It's still nice to have, and I just don't feel like there's enough there to warrant the splash. Although you could certainly splash Paladin. Run something like I say here on this write-up. You could do something like 17 Cleric, 3 Paladin. You could do something like 17 Cleric, 2 Fighter. It wouldn't be bad. Like, that's not a bad thing. It's just not what I think is optimal right now, and it's not like what I like to build for. I'd like to build something that's kind of strictly a DPS/healing type character, rather than focus on DPS, healing, and try to build in more survivability. So I think that your survivability with this build is good enough. Okay, let's talk about race. So before kind of we got falconry and we got epic defensive fighting, and before we got some of the newer races, it was kind of like Purple Dragonite was kind of the way to go for this build, because Purple Dragonite has access to Sylvanas, and they get an extra feat, which is really nice. Obviously, so it made them kind of a no-brainer choice. But now we had Aasimar Scourge come out this past year, I believe it is. And yeah, it came out this past year. And they have some nice perks as well. Their enhancement tree is better than Purple Dragonites for our class. And also, they also have access to Sylvanas, and they also have +2 Wisdom. So they're a pretty good choice as well. I think PDK and Scourge are both pretty comparable in terms of viability. Scourge having the bonus of having a better enhancement tree, but in exchange for having +2 Wisdom, but in exchange for that they lose a feat. So it's really up to you. And also you have to keep in mind that any points you spend in Scourge's enhancement tree that are going to take away from points you can spend in Falconry and Radiant Servant. So you have to kind of look at what enhancements you want to take before you select a race when running this build, and let that kind of determine what race you're going to build, depending on what enhancements you want. Like, there's some nice stuff in Scourge, and if you want that, you'll maybe go that race. But if you don't care and rather just have more stuff in Falconry, then go human. I mean, don't go human, go PDK. And I personally prefer PDK for that reason. Let's see. Human's another choice you can take. It's just strictly worse than Purple Dragonite, because human is pretty much, I mean, their enhancement tree is a little bit different, but they're pretty much exactly the same as Purple Dragonite in terms of they get the extra feat, the stats are the same, all that, but they don't have access to Sylvanas, which is the big downside of human. On the upside, if you go human, it's obviously free to play. So if you're a free to play player, you're just starting, you're a new player, it might be what you want to take if you don't want to spend money on the game. And you also, when you go human, you don't have to use an LR, Lesser Reincarnation Heart, which costs more money in addition to buying the race and then the enhancement tree, Falconry, or unlocking Falconry. You don't have to spend that money. So human's like the cheap option, the cheap real money option, but it's just not quite as good, because you're losing. You're basically running a character that's going to be the same as PDK, except you don't get that +2 to critical threat range with Mauls. So that's really the only difference. Starting stats, we're going to be running Wisdom on this build for hit and damage using the Falconry tree. So Wisdom is going to be your primary stat, not to mention Wisdom also powers the amount of spell points you get and your DCs for your spells and things like that. So you want to max your Wisdom for sure. It's by far your most important stat. Well, not by far, but it's your most important stat. Your next important stat after Wisdom is going to be Constitution, and then Charisma and Strength aren't that important. Constitution obviously giving you hit points. Charisma powering the number of turns you get, and Strength you only need, we're not using it for it to hit and damage, but you still need a certain amount of strength in order to meet minimum feat requirements, because there's certain feats like two-handed fighting feat, improved and greater two-handed fighting feats require a certain number of strength. Two-handed fighting feat requires 15. And the greater two-handed fighting and improved two-handed fighting requires 17, and power attack actually requires 13. So you want to make sure you take enough strength for that. Skills that we want to take: heal obviously improves your healing power, so we want that. UMD is very, very important as well. It lets you use all kinds of nice goodies, like teleport scrolls, for example, is really nice, and some other scrolls and things as well, in wands and all that. Jump is always nice. You need jump. It's just nice to have. You can reach certain places. It's just very convenient, and there's not a whole lot of skills that are useful to the class outside of heal and UMD, to be honest. So after jump, it's kind of just whatever you want to put points into. Doesn't really matter too much. There's not really too many other critical skills. Let's see. So I talked already about the amount of points you need for each of or amount of points and strength you need for each of these feats, two-handed fighting feats and power attack and such. So I'm not really going to go through how many skill points to put in each, but I will say that just when you plan out your build, make sure that you actually put enough points and strength so that you're able to take the feats on the level you want. And if you don't have, say like you don't have a strength tome or something, you may have to put more points into strength at the start. So when you're all said and done, you need 17 strength. So if you have like a 4+4 tome, strength tome, you can put only 13 strength. You can maybe put less if you have a higher tome than that. It just depends on what you have. Just make sure you have enough strength when you want to take each feat that we'll go through in a second, when you can. So just plan it out accordingly. Let's see. Okay, so the feat list I'm going to go through here is assuming you are Purple Dragon Knight. If you are not, you'll have to if you take Scourge or something, you'll have to drop one of these feats. Probably want to drop an Intensify feat. So let's just go through these real quick. So, and again, this assumes you have 13 strength starting out and a +4 tome, so that you can take these feats in these order. So some of the feats we take here: power attack, cleave. Power attack good for two-handed fighting damage. Cleave very useful. Let's see, empower healing spell, no brainer to make your healing spells heal for more. Two-handed fighting, obvious for two-handed fighting. DPS. Let's see, great cleave, another very useful thing to have. Improved critical bludgeoning, which you'll need to make your critical range better on your mauls. It does stack with everything, so it stacks with Sylvanas and all that. Improved two-handed fighting, again more two-handed fighting. DPS with our cleaves and things. Overwhelming critical, pretty obvious one you want to take. So a lot of these feats are kind of no-brainers if you run similar, any kind of melee build. You want to take the good melee feats because we're going for melee DPS. So overwhelming critical makes your critical range better. Quicken spell makes it so your spells can't be interrupted. So you cast like the heal spell with quicken spell, you can't get interrupted, and also makes you, as the name would suggest, you would be able to cast a spell faster. Greater two-handed fighting DPS for DPS. Perfect two-handed fighting from DPS. Perfect two-weapon fighting DPS. Even though it's perfect two-weapon, it actually still increases your double strike, so it's worth taking even if you're two-handed fighting build. Okay, this is one that's kind of if you want to take. This is a spell I take at level 29 for the Epic Destiny feat. I take Mass Frog. It's just a really nice thing. Mainly, the only reason I have it is to kill scarecrows in Old Baba's Hut raid. But if you don't really run that and you don't really care, you could switch it for Defy Warding, which improves your PRR basically. So it makes your defense better. So it's kind of up to you which one you want to take. I take Mass Frog for now. Now it's useful again in old Babas to kill scarecrows, but also if you're running like hard, we're not gonna have great DCs on this build to like use it on like Reaper and stuff. But it's still useful to have for like the lower difficulties, and again for old Babas. The reason we're not gonna have great DCs on this build is, even though we're taking like max wisdom, is because we're building for melee. So our feat selection and our gearing selection is not going to go towards improving our DCs. It's going to go towards improving our DPS. And there's just not enough slots available for you to take good, like all the DPS feats and such, and all the casting DC type feats. So that's why we're not going to really have amazing DCs on this build, but they're okay. You can mass spell is usable as well as implosion in a lot of situations. Okay, enhancements. So this is basically what I'm running right now as far as my enhancements. I guess I'm not gonna go through everything, but main thing you want to see here is, yes, I go tier 5 in Radiant Servant, because again, the whole point of this build is to be a healer. So we want Aura. I think Aura is pretty much, even though it's not as good in Reaper as it is in the other difficulties, I still think it's pretty much required to have on a healer. It's just so good for passive healing, and when you get your spell power, positive spell power extremely high, you'll still getting really, you're getting like hundreds of HP ticks on people, every time it ticks. So it's like second or two, people around you are healing hundreds and hundreds of skill points. So it's still really nice, even though it's not, obviously, Aura is not going to help you against spike damage, but it's still really, really good thing, and I think it's pretty much essential to have on a Cleric healer. Let's see, and that's why we go tier 5. We also have the Radiant Servant Capstone. Not amazing, but it gives you some wisdom. I think it makes every 4th spell hit for maximum as far as crit goes. I think it gives you some positive spell power. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it's still nice to have. Let's see, what other things of note. I guess in the Falconry tree, I guess the things of note, I don't take the sprint boost just because I don't find it essential. Like in hard situations, it's good for zerging, but for someone like me who's not trying to like zerg XP, and like I'm someone who stays at cap, so I don't really care about grinding XP and such. So because of that, I don't take it. If I was like running past lives, I would take it. But because I'm just staying at cap mostly, I'm not really concerned about zerging and running really fast. I'm mostly concerned more as playing with parties and staying with parties. I don't take the first Falconry attack because the second one you take here has like a 10-second cooldown, so it's not that critical to take the first one. And also the exposed weakness, which is kind of the best enhancement here. That this basically what this does is gives you the enemy that you hit with one of these bird attacks a minus 50% fort, and that also has a 10-second duration. So this goes on cooldown. Every time this goes off cooldown, you can also still get the exposed weakness bonus, which often is what you want when you're like beating on a boss. So I don't feel it's that essential. If the cooldown was longer, like 15, maybe I would, but it's not. And it also there is also a shared cooldown factor that I think makes it less worth taking. But it's not like if you wanted to take if you wanted to take that, it wouldn't be, it's kind of personal preference. But that's why I personally don't take it. I don't think there's too much else to say. If you have any other questions, comment about enhancements specifically. I guess comment, and I'll do my best if I can. I'll answer it, or maybe in this thread, if you want to post in this thread on the DO forums, you can do that as well. Domain, War Domain is the default choice. It's really a no-brainer. It's as a Destiny, this gives you the Holy Sword SLA, so you get a +1 bonus to critical damage, range, and multiplier, which stacks with all the other stuff, all the other crit bonuses we mentioned so far. So it's really a no-brainer. There's nothing really that compares with it, in my opinion. As far as this build goes, I mean, there's obviously a lot of great other domains for other builds, but for what we're building specifically, we really want the DPS from that. Also, just worth noting that we don't need something like Healing Domain, because we already have sufficient healing, so we don't need to sacrifice DPS on our domain selection for more healing. You'll be fine. You have enough healing already. Epic Destiny, Dreadnought, again, is kind of the no-brainer. It's the best melee DPS Destiny for sure. It's So it's a pretty obvious choice. And again, we don't need to sacrifice our domain choice by taking something like Crusader or Exalted Angel or Sentinel to get more survivability or healing or whatever. We have enough of that already. We just really want the DPS. So sometimes, say if you're in a situation, I think it's really rare, but if you're in a situation where you know it's like maybe you're like, I don't know, a High Reaper or something, and you know you're only going to heal, and it's vital that you stay alive. Maybe swap into Sentinel and give up your DPS, some of your DPS with Dreadnought, just for the survivability. Maybe swap into Sentinel, but that should be rare. Really, you should be contributing both healing and DPS to your party. You don't want to not contribute DPS and become a liability. You don't want to be that guy that only heals and just doesn't contribute anything in terms of kill count. Like, you want to, like, every character you build in DDO, you need to be able to kill things. You can't really play straight. This is not a game where you can really play straight support. I mean, you can, but I don't think it's optimal in this game to play straight support. And it's also, frankly, pretty boring. As far as twists go, so Epic Destiny twists, you'll be running in Dreadnought. For twists, Sense Weakness, I think, is the best twist, and it's a tier 4, and it's a lot. That's a lot of twist points, but I think it's easily worth it. You're often going to be kind of using off-tank DPS, so kind of like beating on a raid boss or something, as a tank has the aggro, and you're kind of healing everyone with aura and bursts and such. So it's really good for that. It's really good for beating down raid mobs and just big HP mobs in general, because you get additional damage based on how much HP the enemy has left. So you're going to get a lot more extra damage from this twist when you fight high HP mobs. You also get additional 30% helpless to mobs with this twist, which is obviously really good with our avian attacks we're going to take, because the avian attacks cause mobs to be helpless. So that's great. Obviously, it synergizes super well, because we'll be utilizing this extra 30% helpless damage a lot. So this one's probably one that some people might disagree with, but I personally take tier 3 twist on Renewal from Sentinel, which is basically a ranged healing attack that kind of heals. It's a kind of a healing dot or healing damage over time. But once you have a high positive spell power, this thing heals, like, the healing per spell point, like, it costs a minute amount of spell points, like 3 spell points or something ridiculously small, and it heals so much. It's so worth it. Like, you can sit there, like, I've healed raids before where you sit there and you can just heal them with, like, Renewal, and your SP lasts forever. Like, it's amazing. In my opinion, like, the best spell by far in the game for tank healing. So it's worth it, because I think with the build you have really good close range healing with aura and burst, but you don't have as good ranged healing. Like, you do, like, you can obviously use the heal spell to heal people up, but that's spell point intensive. So it's really, really nice to have something that's not spell point intensive. That's a great ranged heal to complement your healing arsenal. So I think it's worth it. I mean, maybe if you want to get more DPS, you can take something like Wild Weapons from Fury in tier 3 instead. I believe it's a tier 3 twist. If you're willing to blow spell point pots, because you're going to get in those tough situations sometimes where you have to really focus on healing, and you don't want to run out of spell points. And this really prevents you're not going to run out of spell points if you have Renewal. It's not going to be an issue you have to worry about. So I think it's worth it. But if you want to try to get by without it, and you're willing to chug SP potions, spell point potions, then I guess you could maybe go without it. So that's about it for twists. I mean, as far as essential twists, I mean, some other ones you might want are like ones I have listed here: Unearthly Reactions, Magister, Brace for Impact, Sentinel, Endless Faith from Angel, and Healing Power from Angel, and Wild Weapons from Fury. You know, I think those are some good suggestions, but, you know, if you can kind of put whatever you want for the rest of them, whatever you feel fits your play style. Past lives, it is a first slice friendly build. You don't need any past lives or anything, like, because it's not a DC focused character. The main thing you want past lives for in DDO in general is your DCs, like to hit your DCs and spell pen for, like, Reaper and stuff. Like, a lot of people, I think that's probably the most useful past lives are for that. But since we're not that kind of character, we're a melee character, it's not as essential. Now, it's really nice. I think if you want to go for any martial past lives for 9%, you get 3 of those. They're 3% each double strike, so you get 3. You have 9% double strike. So I went and I did that a long time ago, and I think it's worth doing. It's just 3 epic pass lives, not too bad, but it's a really nice increase for DPS, 9% double strike. So those are really nice. Others like Paladin for better heal amp, Favorite Soul, Wizard, Asmar, Human are all nice as well. So if you want to go after those, cool, but you don't have to. As far as the build being first life friendly, I will say there's an asterisk on that, because while you don't need past lives, you do need some premium content. The Falconry tree you can unlock now in game, I believe, but it does cost money. If you're new starting out, you will have to buy it if you want to access it immediately. Let's see, other things like Purple Dragon Knight is a premium race. Asmar Scourge is a premium race. You'd have to buy that, and you'd also have to buy, if you want to run those races, you'd also have to buy an LR heart in order to lesser reincarnate and take out the Force first level for these characters, because Fighter is a Force first level for Purple Dragon Knight and Asmar Scourge. I think it's Ranger is the Force first level, and we don't want that, so you have to LR those out, or you'd have to go Human, which is a free-to-play race, so that does make it more new player friendly. But if you go Human, again, you're not going to be completely optimal, but I guess it's an option if you just want to run per past life and you don't really care about being optimal. But yeah, enough of that. Let's go ahead and talk about play style. So the way you want to play this build is, you want to kind of judge by party, because the way you play this build really depends on the party. Because say you just join a pug and you're running just like legendary hard or something, and you're just running easy content, you basically play this character as a barbarian or a fighter, because when you're running like stuff like normal and hard, that probably is going to be a breeze for most parties. You don't have to worry about healing because no one needs it, so you can just kind of go max DPS and go all out on that and not really pay attention to healing. Unless you're with a weaker party, then you might. But or like worst case scenario, you could just throw on your aura and just forget about it. But then there's other times where you're running with a party and you're running Reaper mode, and you've got to really focus on healing. You might not be able to DPS much at all, and you got to be really careful not to die when you DPS, because this is not the most survivable build, although it's pretty it is survivable, but it's not like the best in survivability. And as the healer, you don't want to die, so you've got to kind of play this build depending on party and depending on it plays completely different depending on if you're running easy content and hard content. And that's one thing I like about it, because there are so many different ways to play this build, and it really changes drastically how the character plays depending on difficulty of content and party. Sometimes you're playing more as a healer, sometimes you're playing more as a DPS character, sometimes you even play as a tank, just depending. You can't even play this as a tank a little bit, so it just depends. So I think the most important thing when playing this build, and this is where kind of melee clerics get kind of, for some people, get a bad rep in DDO, because you don't want to be that guy who's playing a melee cleric and ignores the party for healing and just blindly goes and DPSs and doesn't heal people when they need it and goes up front and just dies, even though there's no reason for you to take the aggro. You don't want to be that guy. You don't want to play, but at the same time, you don't want to play too safe and just heal, because then you're not contributing in terms of DPS and you're being a liability to your party in a lot of situations. You want to be able to kill stuff too. So you've got to find a good balance. You've got to kind of know when it's safe to go up in melee and when you need to when you need to stay back. So it's just a balancing act, and it's something you learn from experience from playing this type of character, is when you can melee and when you should be not meleeing and healing more. And I think in Reaper in particular, a really good tactic for this build is to really utilize your avian attacks. So one thing you might want to do is run in, use one of your avian attacks to debuff a group of mobs. So maybe make them helpless and blind, and cut down their fortification with exposed weakness. So you do that, and then you run out and heal. So I think running in, kind of playing the character is kind of a hit and run character. So you go in, you melee for a couple seconds, and then you run back out and heal and stuff. I think that's a really good way to play it in Reaper. It's kind of how I've been playing it, but again, it just kind of depends on difficulty of the quest and such. Let's see. So obviously it's a two-handed fighting build, so you want to be cleaving a lot. There's a lot of stuff to hit in addition to your avian attacks. You want to be cleaving a lot to kind of take advantage of of your two-handed fighting abilities with this. You took all the feats, so you want to take advantage of your two-handed fighting abilities with cleave and such. So just make sure you're doing that and using your avian attacks as much as you can. Let's see. Oh yeah, and the other thing to point out is epic defensive fighting. So epic defensive fighting is a feat. You got to know when to turn it on and turn it off. This is a build that, one of the few builds that has to juggle that feat. Like a lot of builds, like casters just straight ignore it because they can't use it without severely gimping their casting abilities. And then straight melee characters like fighters and stuff, they get to leave it on and pretty much never have to worry about turning it off because they don't care that casting and ranged abilities are gimped with epic defensive fighting on, because they don't use those anyway for the most part. Now, there's probably some exceptions, but for the most part, I'm just generalizing. But with this build, you want to be meleeing sometimes and healing sometimes, so it's kind of a pain to juggle at first, but you get used to it. I didn't like it at first, but I have gotten used to it over time. But you want to just get in the habit of, when you go into melee, you just click it on. When you need to go back and heal, you click it off. And there's going to be some times where you're in tough healing spots and you need to not have it on at all, like raids and stuff. You probably want to have it off a lot of the time. But when you're running, say with legendary hard or easier content, you can just keep it on all the time if you want, because no one really needs healing anyways. A lot of the time you're running like normal and hard. So it just depends. Again, it's a juggling thing. You've got to know when to turn it off, when to be aggressive, when to be passive, and be a support healing type character. So let's see. It is nice to have it on though, because obviously it gives you that a good extra bit of survivability, and we take enough feats with this build to get the maximum bonus from epic defensive fighting. I think it's 25%, 20 or 25% HP bonus by having it on. I can't remember exactly which one it was, but yeah, it's obviously nice to have on if you can, but don't have it on too much. Again, don't be that guy who has it on and you have people dying everywhere and you have the feat on, but you're not healing people even though you should. Just don't be that guy. You need to know when to turn it off, but you also need to know when to turn it on and go in and actually hit monsters and kill things, because you don't want to be that guy who doesn't help the party in DPS, in the DPS category. And okay, enough of that. I've been repeating myself. I'm just repeating and going in circles at this point. So I guess the last thing to say is War Priest. So I made a whole video a while back on War Priest. I will, if I remember, I'll put it in a link in the description below, about why I don't use War Priest. I actually don't think it's right now. I mean, you can splash in War Priest if you want and take some of the lower abilities, but in my opinion, it's not really worth putting any points into right now. Falconry is just, like, in my opinion, strictly better. And again, I made a whole video about that, so you can watch that if you want. I won't talk about it too much, but yeah, even stuff in War Priest like Divine Might, we don't care about it anymore because we're not using strength for it to hit and damage. Divine Might, it gives you a bonus to strength, so we don't even care about stuff like that. So, but yeah, you can watch that video if you want to hear more about it. And also in this post, there is a link to my old version of my build. So if you're interested in looking at my 15 Cleric, 4 Paladin, 1 Fighter old build, you can still run that. I don't think it's optimal, but it still works fine as an option. It's just not quite optimal. And I'll also link my old video. Well, I'll link my old video from like years ago, but it's probably out of date at this point. But I made an old video, which is actually the most viewed video on my channel ever. I'll link that below, I guess. But that explains that build further, even though some stuff I say in there, probably quite a bit of stuff is out of date at this point. But yeah, guys, that's going to be it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Leave comments, and I will try to answer them if I can. Please subscribe and all that stuff to the channel if you like this video and you want to see more from me. There hasn't been too much going on in the game the past couple months, which is one of the reasons I haven't been uploading. They've just been kind of working on the upcoming expansion, Sharn. So there'll probably be more videos from me in the future. I'm not sure how many I'll make, but there'll probably be some more as we get to more exciting things coming up here in the next few months. When hopefully, I don't know when Sharn's going to release, but hopefully it releases in the next few months. I think it's the next update, but not completely sure. But yeah, guys, that's me for this video. I hope you enjoyed. Guys, I will see you next time. I hope you enjoyed. Leave me comments again, all that stuff. Yeah, see you next time. I'm done. Bye.